In medieval Europe, the month of January brought not only bitter cold and howling winds, but also something more sinister, the hungry moon. Named for the desperate hunger that gripped the land when food supplies were scarce and the frost clung to everything, the moon of January was feared by all. It was said that those who perished in this cruelest of seasons, their bellies empty and their bodies frozen, could not rest in peace. Instead, they would rise again, not as ghosts, but as something darker, a wraith, driven by hunger and a thirst for warmth that could never be satisfied. This tale comes from a snowbound village in northern Europe, a place so isolated that when winter descended, it was as if the world itself vanished under a shroud of ice. The villagers spoke little, for they had grown accustomed to the stark realities of survival. The wind howled like a hungry wolf through the narrow streets, and the ground, hard as stone, yielded little. It was a time of fear, a time when food was scarce, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer with each passing day. One particularly harsh winter, the villagers found themselves facing their greatest fear: starvation. The stores had been depleted, the animals were gone, and the fields lay under layers of snow, unable to provide even a meager harvest. In the dead of winter, a beggar arrived at the gates of the village, shivering, his eyes hollow with hunger. He pleaded for food and warmth. "Please," the beggar croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've traveled for days. I have nothing left." His skeletal hands reached out, trembling. "A crust of bread, a place by the fire. I beg of you." The villagers, too poor to spare anything, averted their eyes. One elder stepped forward, his face hard. "There is no food here," he said curtly. "We have nothing for ourselves. Go before you bring more misfortune to this cursed season." "But the cold, I will die." The beggar's voice broke, raw with desperation. The elder shook his head. "Better one than all of us." That night, the beggar froze to death at the gates, his body found by the morning light, a tragic reminder of the brutal season. The villagers buried him outside the gates, in the frozen earth, muttering quiet prayers. "May the earth give him peace," one whispered, though his voice faltered. They were unaware that his death had sealed their fate. When the full moon rose in January, known as the Hungry Moon, something unnatural took hold of the village. The cold deepened, an unnatural chill that gnawed at the bones, colder than any winter had been before. It was a cold that no fire could chase away, no matter how many logs were piled into hearths. As the night drew on, strange things began to happen. The air thickened with frost, and at every door the faint sound of scratching could be heard. "Do you hear that?" one woman whispered to her husband, clutching her shawl tightly. "Yes," he said, his voice trembling. "It's at the door." "Don't open it," she hissed. The scratching grew louder, insistent. A voice followed, faint and rasping, as though carried on the icy wind. "Let me in," it whispered. "It's so cold, so cold." The husband stepped back, his face pale. "It's him," he whispered. "The beggar. It must be." "Nonsense," she snapped, though her voice quivered. "He's buried. He's dead." The voice came again, louder this time, filled with anguish. "Please, I'm so hungry." One by one, the villagers began to disappear. Those who dared to open their doors were never seen again. Only the sound of their footsteps, quick and frantic, could be heard as they vanished into the night. And when the others went searching for them, they followed a trail of frost. Thin, brittle footprints leading into the woods, where the snow had settled, as if nothing had ever disturbed it. The survivors, now fearing for their lives, gathered together in the church. "What are we dealing with?" one man asked, his voice shaking. "The hungry moon," an elder woman replied. "It has claimed him, and now he has returned to claim us." "We need to fight back," a younger villager cried. "We can't just wait for it to come for us." The elder shook her head. "You cannot fight hunger, boy. It is endless, eternal. All we can do is survive the night." They built a massive bonfire in the village square, hoping its flames would drive away the wraith they had unwittingly summoned. They poured all their remaining firewood into the flames, watched the bonfire grow high, the smoke curling up into the frigid night sky. But when the fire finally burned out, leaving only smoldering embers, they were met with a chilling sight. Standing in the ashes of the bonfire was a single figure, a tall, skeletal form, its mouth gaping wide, as if frozen in a scream of eternal hunger. What is that?" one villager whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's him," the elder said, her voice hollow. "The beggar, no longer a man." The wraith turned its empty gaze toward the group, its breath a cloud of frost in the air. It raised a hand, skeletal and covered in frost, and pointed at the villagers. "It's so cold," the wraith moaned, its voice like ice scraping against stone. "I am so hungry." The villagers could only watch in horror as the wraith, its form shifting like smoke, began to glide toward them. Its presence brought an unbearable cold, one that sank deep into their bones. "We have to run," someone screamed, breaking the spell of terror. As dawn broke over the village, the last of the villagers fled, abandoning the homes they had lived in for generations. They whispered of the wraith, of the hungry moon that had come to claim them, and vowed never to return. To this day, it is said that during the full moon of January, if you listen closely on the coldest of nights, you might hear faint scratches at your door, a whisper on the wind that speaks of hunger, of an endless search for warmth. And if you open the door, you may find nothing but an icy chill, the breath of the wraith of the hungry moon, still searching, still starving. Take heed when the moon rises in January's darkest nights, for the cold is not just a product of winter. It is the warning of something more, something that hungers in the frozen shadows, and once it finds you, it will never let go.